Thanks for joining me today in the greenhouse. Just wanted to chat with you a little bit on some best practices for keeping your patio pots and hanging baskets, as well as all your other gardens, looking great all summer. Wanted to give you some advice on just general maintenance, as well as some watering and fertilizing tips. So to start with general maintenance, one thing that a lot of people don't realize is with any sort of container, you're going to have to do some trimming and just some general maintenance of it. So if you have something like a geranium in it, you're going to have to make sure you deadhead it. Anything that we plant, geraniums need deadheading. Anything with a verbena, you do use some benefit to trim off those dead verbenas. However, the petunias, anything that we grow in a container does not need to be deadheaded. Now these aren't quite spent, but I'm just gonna, for the sake of showing you, I just am picking them off. There are some over here that definitely need to go. Right here's one. That one I can leave for a little bit yet. But as you can see, this planter, it got a little dry earlier in the week because it was crazy hot in here, and it's gotten long. So all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna trim some of these up, and what that's gonna do is promote new growth from the center. And I'm gonna try my best to make sure that if it gets hot again, it stays watered a little bit better. It was really hard in here earlier in the week, I'm sure you can imagine. So I'm just gonna, like I said, trim some of that off. See, it's a little lopsided. The geraniums are kind of all out the one side, so I'm gonna trim a bit more on this side here. Clean some of that up. And like I said, what this is really doing is promoting new growth from the center, and it's gonna hopefully help to, over time, make it a little less lopsided looking. Now, like cutting your hair, you can, if you cut too much off, you can't glue it back on. So be a little bit conservative in your trimming. You can always trim more. Okay, but that's already starting to look a little better. And we're gonna trim a little bit on this side too. Try to promote some more growth over here. The light pink seems to have done much better than the dark pink. Oh, look at this guy's all long and leggy. I don't like the look of that at all. I'm gonna trim it way back here, which I know seems like a lot, but what that's gonna do is it's gonna push new growth from the center, which is really the goal of the whole haircut thing, okay? So that's our first step, is just some general maintenance, trimming, pulling out any dead leaves, because like I said, it did get a little dry earlier in the week. We're gonna pull that dead piece out. That'll help clean it up. It'll also give room for the new growth to come. And you can see already that there's new little sprouts coming in here, so that's really awesome to see. Second thing that you need to know about containers particularly, on days when it's super hot out like we had earlier in the week, you may need to water particularly hanging baskets and some smaller patio pots more than once a day. I know it's a lot of work, but if you want them to stay looking really good, especially if they're in full sun when it's 40 degrees outside, it's just really, really hard on your plants. So make sure they keep watered. And as with that watering, I would say don't spray it with the hose. You want to try to get right into the base of the plants and water down underneath all the foliage. Make sure you really, really soak it in. There should be water running out of the bottom of your container when you're done watering. And I would recommend that you don't water in the middle of the day. Try to water either first thing in the morning or a little bit later in the evening. Not right when it's dark out, but just as the heat of the day is starting to ebb, that's a better time to water. However, if you find your basket at noon and it's completely wilted, give it a drink, okay? Don't be afraid to water in the middle of the day, but if you have the choice, try to water earlier or later than the middle of the day. Second thing to note is, if you find your basket and it's really, really dried out, you pour water in it, it's gonna run right through. It won't even hardly soak it up. It's like it gets so dried it can't even absorb the water. What we really recommend then is that you find a pail, a basin, something that you can set it in for 5 or 10 minutes to let it really soak up that water so that the soil can really get saturated again, so that it's able to hold water, because when it's really dry, it's like it just runs right through. It hardly even absorbs anything. So that's a definite plus, is if you can let that get saturated. So those are your trimming and watering tips, but here's the really important one. Your flowers need fertilizer. Some things are gonna be heavier feeders than others. Geraniums tend to be less heavy feeders. They'll look good, it seems to be, no matter what you do to them. Petunias and some of these really showy plants, verbena, are gonna be heavier feeders, which means they need fertilizer. So I'm gonna give you kind of a okay, and then what I really recommend. So if you really don't wanna water with fertilizer in your watering can, certainly a slow release product is good. There's nothing wrong with this. It'll do a good job of keeping your plants healthy. However, if you really want the full potential of your plants, you're not gonna beat using a blossom booster. And if you have petunias, I really recommend you use Petunia Feed, which is a JAX product. It has an extra component of iron in it, which keeps your petunias from going anemic. You can use it on all other plants as well. It doesn't hurt them to have the iron, but petunias absolutely need it. You'll see them start to yellow if you don't use it. If you don't have any petunias, a general blossom booster, we have a Jack's version. We also have a Miracle Grow version. Those are the best. And the thing that I like about the Jack's product is it also gives you some watering recommendations. It says here, for outdoor plants, 1 tablespoon per gallon of water. So there's a little measuring spoon in here. It's in the bottom of here. There's a tablespoon measure, and that's a tablespoon measure, and you just use 1 scoop of this in a gallon. So you're gonna have to figure out how much water your watering can holds, or your whatever you're watering with, so that you can use the right ratio. But it's 1 tablespoon per gallon. Or it also says if you would rather water every time, water at ½ teaspoon a gallon, sorry, ¼ teaspoon a gallon every time you water. So there's actually measuring little parts on here as well, so you can see the different measurements. But the point is, if you're not, I always have a hard time remembering what day I fertilize, so instead I just fertilize every time, and I just use it at a lower dilution. So that's probably my pro tip for you, is to water every single time with fertilizer and just use a little less. The Jack's Petunia feed has the same thing. It says 1 teaspoon per gallon every time you water. That's the constant feed, or 1 tablespoon per gallon if you're only going to do it every 7 to 10 days. And again, there's a little scoop in here. This stuff looks a little different. It's kind of got granulars in it, which I'm sure has to do with the iron formulation, but same little scoop. So 1 teaspoon if you're going to do it every time, 1 tablespoon if you're only going to do it once a week. So it's really up to you, whichever you prefer. The other thing that you will notice, especially on the really hot days, is if you have bought more shade-loving plants and put them in a sunny location, they're going to pay the price because they're just not up for that. Particularly, I got an email this week from somebody who bought our sunset planter, which is, we do say is a sunshine planter. You can use the sunset planter, sun or shade. Absolutely true. But she emailed me to see why the Lysmachia, which is that green, creepy stuff, is turning yellow. And Lysmachia, when it gets really stressed from either heat or sun, does turn a bit yellow. So it doesn't have that vibrant green color it did earlier in the year because the sun's gotten hotter. There's nothing wrong with it. It's still a healthy plant. It's just that it's yellowed instead of being more green. So I just suggested to her that there's nothing wrong with the planter. If she wants it more green, she'll have to move it to a little shadier location. If she likes that limey-er, yellowy-er color, then it's no problem to keep it in the full sun where she has it. So some things like that. New Guinea impatiens are another one that sometimes people think they have a shadier spot than they do, and then they realize when these plants are super stressed out that it was actually probably a little bit more sunshine than they realized, so they had to kind of adjust for that. So those are my care tips for summer to help keep your planters looking great. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks so much. Happy gardening.